It was an ordinary warm summer day. I slipped into my new swimsuit, the one that hugged my curves just right, and let the sun soak into my skin as I stretched out by the pool, lost in the quiet of the afternoon. But what happened next? Well, that was something I had only ever dared to imagine in the secret corners of my mind. In the blink of an eye, everything between stepfather and me was turned upside down. My name is Lola. I'm 22, fresh out of university, and I came to spend some time at my mom's old house. She had gone on a short business trip to a nearby city, leaving me behind. My stepfather, James, was around the house, doing whatever it is he does when he's not working. He and my mom had been married for 5 years now, ever since my dad left her for another woman, shattering our world. James and I had always gotten along. He was kind to me, always there when I needed support, giving me a warmth I never expected from a man who wasn't my real father. But that day, things changed, things I never saw coming. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the swimming pool, its surface shimmering like liquid glass. I was lounging on a float, eyes closed, the gentle lapping of the water, soothing as I soaked in the sunlight. The peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. "Hey kiddo," my stepdad called out, his voice teasing. I opened my eyes to see him standing at the edge of the pool, a playful grin on his face. His body glistened in the sunlight as he stood, looking relaxed and carefree. "Hey James, are you coming in?" I replied, trying to keep my voice light even though my heart was racing. "Maybe I will," he said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "But you'll have to catch me first." With that, he dove into the pool, creating a splash that sent waves across the surface. I couldn't help but laugh, excitement bubbling up inside me. I kicked off the float and swam toward him, the cool water invigorating against my skin as I chased after him. He was surprisingly fast, gliding effortlessly through the water. "You think you can catch me?" he teased, glancing back with a playful smirk. "Just wait," I called out, my determination pushing me forward as I closed the gap between us. Finally, I lunged forward, grabbing his arm and pulling him closer. "Got you," I laughed. He spun around to face me, a deep laugh escaping him. "All right, you win this time." We both paused, our faces hovering just inches apart. The tension in the air shifted, a strange spark between us. I could feel the warmth of the sun on my back, the water gently lapping around our legs, and a quiet tension in the air. His gaze softened. "You're improving," he said quietly, his voice warm with encouragement. "Thanks, James," I replied, trying to keep my composure, though my heart was racing. Not just from swimming. There was something else now. He stepped a little closer, his voice low and gentle. "I always wanted to teach you how to swim better. Maybe we could practice together more often." "Yeah," I agreed, the thought of spending more time with him making my chest tighten. "I'd like that." His eyes flickered for a moment, his expression shifting. "You've grown up so much," he said, his voice softer now. There was something deeper in his gaze that caught me off guard, a longing maybe. I stepped a little closer, feeling a mix of emotions swirl inside me. "I feel like I've missed out on time with you," I admitted quietly. He brushed a damp strand of hair from my face, his fingers lingering for a moment on my skin. "I feel the same way," he whispered. For a brief moment, we both stood there, the world around us fading as the tension between us grew stronger. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in slightly, our faces close. There was a moment of hesitation, but then he smiled warmly, as if sharing a quiet, comforting connection. It was an innocent touch, but it sparked a sense of closeness. I felt a warm rush of emotion, and for a moment, everything around us faded. It was no longer just a simple peck. It was something more, something full of emotion and connection. When we finally pulled away, both of us breathless, I searched his eyes, trying to read his thoughts. "What just happened?" I asked, a mix of excitement and confusion swirling inside me. I don't know, he admitted softly, still holding me close. But I can't pretend it didn't feel amazing. I nodded, my heart racing. It did. There was a pause, the air thick with the intensity of the moment. He stepped back slightly, but his hands stayed on my waist, his thumbs brushing my skin gently. It was an unfamiliar feeling, but I didn't want to pull away. He met my gaze again, his eyes softening, a quiet understanding passing between us. And though neither of us spoke, there was an unspoken agreement. Sometimes, moments like these were meant to be felt, not questioned. I looked up at him breathless. What if someone sees us? Let them, he murmured, his voice soft but filled with something I couldn't ignore. His lips brushed mine, sending a jolt of energy through me. I want to be close to you, and I'm tired of pretending I don't. His words stirred something inside me, and I leaned in, sharing a more meaningful kiss this time, filled with emotion. The world around us seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us, caught up in the moment. His hand rested gently on my back as the water rippled around us. The coolness of the pool felt soothing against the warmth of the sun. Do you really mean that? I asked between breaths, my heart racing. Absolutely, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I've wanted this for so long. The kiss deepened, and I felt a sense of urgency between us, like we were both letting go of something we had been holding back. In that moment, nothing else seemed to matter. I pulled him closer, feeling the connection between us grow stronger as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm golden glow around us. I whispered, let's not stop. He nodded, his eyes burning with intensity, and leaned in for another kiss. We surrendered to the moment, letting everything else fade away. It was as though the connection between us was deepening with every touch, every kiss. Something new and exciting was awakening, and I knew we couldn't ignore it anymore. I could feel his presence strongly, the warmth of his body as I traced my fingers along his shoulders. There was a sense of closeness I hadn't expected. The cool water around us only seemed to intensify the warmth growing between us. Let's move to the shallow end, I suggested, my voice breathless, barely above a whisper. I want to feel closer to you. His gaze darkened, and with a nod he followed me. We made our way to the shallower part of the pool, where the water was warmer, and the air felt thick with something unspoken. I climbed onto the edge of the pool, feeling the cool tile beneath my skin, and he followed, closing the distance between us. Is this okay? He asked softly, his voice low, as he slid beside me. I could see the hint of uncertainty in his eyes, but the closeness between us felt right. It's more than okay, I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. I want this. With a smile, he reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from my face before leaning in to kiss me again. This time, the kiss was softer, yet charged with an undeniable intensity. It felt like everything was falling into place, and I melted into him, our lips moving together in perfect harmony. As the kiss deepened, I felt his hands on my waist, pulling me closer. The warmth of his touch sent a wave of energy through me, and I responded instinctively, wrapping my arms around his neck. Every kiss, every touch, only seemed to fuel the intensity between us. You feel so good, he whispered against my lips, his breath warm and inviting. I could sense the yearning in his voice, and it mirrored my own feelings. In that moment, I knew that this was just the beginning of something new, something we couldn't ignore any longer. I whispered the words, my voice barely above a breath, but there was no shame in this moment, just raw honesty. Then let's not hold back, he said softly, his lips brushing against mine teasingly before capturing them again. The kiss sparked something inside me, overwhelming and intoxicating. I could feel his hands gently tracing the curves of my back, and I responded by pressing closer to him, my heart racing. James, I breathed, pulling back for a moment to catch my breath. The reality of what we were sharing hit me, and I felt a pang of uncertainty. Is this really okay? He gently cupped my face, his fingers softly caressing my cheek. Just let it happen, he murmured. His voice was filled with warmth and tenderness, and I allowed myself to surrender to the moment, trusting my instincts. I leaned in again, and our lips met with renewed passion. Every kiss felt like a promise, something unspoken yet undeniable. His hands moved lower, resting on my waist, and I tangled my fingers in his hair, losing myself in the sensation of being close to him. The world around us seemed to disappear, leaving only us, the warmth of our connection, and the spark of emotion that flowed between us. James, he whispered between kisses, his voice thick with emotion. I never expected to feel this way about you. I didn't either, I confessed, my heart racing as I leaned into him. But it feels so right. The air between us grew thick with longing, and I pressed myself closer to him, feeling the heat radiating between us. There was an urgency in his movements, a pull I couldn't resist. Our kisses grew more intense, more desperate, a reflection of the emotions building between us. I pulled back slightly, my lips hovering just above his. I looked into his eyes, my heart pounding in my chest. What do we do now? I whispered. We take this one step at a time, he replied, his voice low, steady, and filled with care. Together. With that, we shared another quiet moment, our connection deepening as we held each other close. The connection between us deepened, and I felt as though we were wrapped in our own bubble. Nothing else existed beyond the warmth and intimacy we shared. Every kiss sent waves of warmth through me, igniting a feeling of belonging, something I hadn't known I needed. Let's promise to keep this between us for now, he murmured softly, his words grounding me. I promise, I whispered back, my heart racing with excitement and a touch of fear. I could sense the gravity of what we were sharing, but the thrill of being so close to him, of exploring this new bond, was too compelling to ignore. As the sun dipped lower, casting a soft golden light over the pool, we held each other in silence, savoring the intimacy we had created. I felt safe in his arms, a sense of belonging wrapping around me like a blanket. Whatever happens next, I'm here for you, he said gently, brushing his lips against my forehead. The tenderness of the gesture ignited a warmth within me. I know, I replied, my heart swelling with affection. And I'm here for you too. In that moment, I realized we were embarking on something new together. It was uncertain, yes, but filled with endless possibilities. With him by my side, I felt a sense of hope and excitement for whatever lay ahead. An adventure, thrilling and unknown, just beneath the surface. A few days had passed since that night, but I still couldn't find peace. My heart was torn between two emotions, the desire to be close to him, and the comfort I felt when I was with my mom. Every time I tried to calm myself, my thoughts would return to that moment in the pool. The look in his eyes, the way we shared such a powerful emotion. And at the same time, I felt my heart tighten when I thought about my mom. She had been my greatest support in life, and I couldn't understand how I had ended up in this situation, where my own feelings were questioning everything I had always believed about family, about what was right and wrong. Every glance at James felt like a test. He didn't matter less to me, but in my heart doubts began to grow. I could no longer ignore them. Each day we spent together, each laugh, each look seemed to deepen the inner conflict. What am I doing? Is this really right? Am I prepared to destroy everything I've built with my mom? My heart started to spin in a cycle with no way out. Every time I tried to push these thoughts aside, they came rushing back. And so, after many sleepless nights and inner turmoil, I knew I had to talk to him. I couldn't let this go on unsaid. I couldn't live in this tension and confusion. That evening, we sat in silence until finally, I found the courage to speak. James, we need to talk. I said nervously, though I knew this conversation had to happen. He turned to me, his eyes soft but focused, and I could see the uncertainty in them. He immediately noticed something had changed in me. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice calm, but I could tell he was feeling the shift between us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I can't continue this. I can't ignore my feelings. I need to figure things out." He looked at me surprised, his face losing its usual ease. I could see how difficult it was for him to understand what I had just said. But I knew this was what needed to be done. "Lola," he started, but I interrupted him, feeling I couldn't bear the uncertainty anymore. "I love my mom, and I can't do this to her trust. It's wrong. It's beyond what I can forgive myself for." The silence that followed was heavy. He didn't speak at once, and I could feel his struggle to understand my words. But I knew deep down we both understood. "I get it, Lola," he said quietly finally. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. I don't know what it was, but maybe it's just my desire to have a family. Something was missing. Maybe this wasn't what I thought it was. But I still love your mom." His words seemed to come from a place of understanding, but I could see in his eyes that the situation wasn't clear to him either. He, too, was trying to make sense of what had happened between us. I nodded, not sure what else to say, because I wasn't sure myself. It was more than just physical attraction. It was an emotional closeness that had come on so unexpectedly, without warning. "You're right," I whispered. "It's better if we part ways before it's too late." He fell silent again, and I saw how much it hurt him. But I knew that we both understood. This was the only way forward. That night, I made the decision to leave. I didn't know where I would go to find my happiness, but I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo. I packed my things in silence, and each item I put into my bag seemed heavier, just like the weight of the situation. "Goodbye, James," I said quietly, just before I left. "I'm going, but I hope we can still be friends." He nodded silently, his gaze sad but understanding. It was a step we both needed to take. I left, leaving everything behind. But I wasn't sure if it was the right decision or not. Would I find what I was looking for? And would I ever be able to let go of the feelings that had developed so unexpectedly? Time would tell, but one thing I knew for sure. I couldn't stay in the shadow of this doubt anymore. I set off to find my own path.